Uncle Dan.
Hey!
In the course of human events,
I don't like that course.
back in the before time, things weren't always terrible.
What?
Yeah,
I'm not sure that I buy it.
There were days when you didn't want to put your head in the oven, and I know for a lot of listeners they don't remember that. But I'm hoping for days in the future where that is also the case.
Does that mean we can no longer say hindsight is 20/20? Because 2020 was such a fucking mess.
Yeah.
Well, at least it's all in hindsight now.
That's true. Well, dear uncles, it has been a hell of a week, yes?
What's
How do you figure?
We nearly lost the Republic, but
We may have lost the Republic.
We still might.
We'll see.
nearly lost the Republic, but then it was lunchtime, so they all had to go.
Yeah, nobody brought orange slices, so... we all thought that 2021 would be the dawn of a new and better day, but if this week is at all emblematic of the year that's to come...
Which it can't be, because then we'll all be blowed up by the end.
Yeah, because then 2021 will be basically 2020, supercharged with 6 pounds of uncut biker crank.
Yeah.
And it's nearly impossible to look at this last week and feel anything but a deep, gaping unease. Especially when our job is to try at least to be funny.
Yeah.
What happened
is that our job? That's rough.
I think I heard that once.
Okay.
Yeah. What happened in our nation's capital this week and the dark forces that have been unleashed will be the defining struggle of our generation, no doubt about it. Back in episode 102, we took a little tour of the laughably stupid QAnon conspiracy, and what a merry time we had making fun of what was truly the unified field theory of derp.
Yeah.
But like all cancers that go untreated, this last week we saw this malignancy metastasize and spread to the very seat of our democracy. Back in episode 138, we discussed the similarities between the cult of Trump and the myriad other dangerous and deadly cults we have talked about on this show. This last week we saw that cult cross the Rubicon from threatening to downright deadly. It's unspeakable what has happened to us. And Uncle Mark, you summed it up when we were talking on the phone the other day, possibly in the most succinct way.
What I say?
This last Wednesday felt like 9/11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That same sense of darkness, hopelessness, and helplessness that engulfed us.
I had a visceral thing in my stomach. I'm like, when was the last time I felt this fucking weird?
It was when the second plane hit the towers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, except that even then, at least, we had an enemy.
Yeah.
Now it's us. The
We are
enemy
the
is
enemy.
the call's coming from inside the house.
Enemy's always kind of been us, but
Yeah.
It's hard not to be overwhelmed by that sense when you watch a group of armed, organized, and bloodthirsty fanatics somehow basically just walk unhindered into what we thought was the safest place in the world.
Yeah.
And one of the worst things about this infantile insurrection is that it eclipsed what was and should be one of the most amazing, hopeful, and progressive things to happen in our country in many years. And that's what I want to talk about today. Since we are finally, mercifully, spared the nearly hourly interjection by our soon-to-be indicted president into our lives and psyches via Twitter, let us take that pause to reflect on the incredible fact that Georgia, one of the original 7 states to secede from the Union over slavery, and the last to be readmitted after William Tecumseh Sherman nearly erased it from the map, is now a blue state.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's a blue shade of purple, but yeah.
Not only did it tip and vote for
but
President-elect...
boy, was it red for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only did it vote for President-elect Joe Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, but on Tuesday, Georgia elected Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff to the United States Senate.
Thanks to us.
Yeah. I mean, Stacey Abrams certainly helped.
We'll talk about her.
I guess. You can give her some of the credit, sure.
This election is historic in many ways. Ossoff will be the first millennial elected to the Senate, and the youngest senator...
Is he the first?
He's the first millennial to the Senate. To the Senate, yeah.
Wow.
And not the House, but and the youngest senator elected to the Senate since the election of one Joseph R. Biden in 1973.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
That's
Joe
funny.
Biden was young once?
Joe Biden.
It
I thought
did
he was
happen.
just an eternal.
Yeah, exactly. And Ossoff will be the first Jewish member of the Senate from the Deep South since 1879.
Jesus Christ.
Now, Warnock will be the first African-American senator ever from the state of Georgia.
I know. That's
and the
insane.
first African-American senator ever from a former state of the Confederacy.
Wow.
No,
Let
no,
that
no.
sink
What?
in.
Is that
Yeah,
true?
That's true.
Ever?
Ever.
from the 11 states or however many it was. Wow.
This means, of course, that for hundreds of years, tens of millions of African Americans in the South have never been represented fully in the U.S. Senate until now. We often talk about this democracy being hundreds of years old, but for so many of our fellow citizens, this democracy is only decades old, and for many, it still has yet to be a democracy. But let's not let those facts lessen the glorious news out of Georgia. And I'm not in the mood to temper this victory with the fact that two of the most onerous and despicable people to ever cast a shadow, Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue, almost won.
Now, they may cast shadows, but have you ever seen them cast a reflection? I don't think so.
Warnock and Ossoff overcame decades of political atrophy, voter suppression, and institutional racism to win, and they fucking won. And that's awesome. The path to victory, like you said, Uncle Mark, was blazed, of course, by the likes of Stacey Abrams, Rebecca DeHart, Deborah Scott, LaTosha Brown, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, and the many, many, mostly women of color who once again saved a country that does not seem to deserve them.
Yeah. And numberless volunteers and people that knocked doors and did what they could during this pandemic. And
Now, not putting us in the same universe as titans like them, but as Uncle Dan, you mentioned, we also, in a limited way, participated in this victory, along with the boys over at Cognitive Dissonance and our friends at the Gamcast, Opening Arguments, and Scathing Atheist, and others. We helped raise over $100,000, well over $100,000 for the Georgia runoffs.
Almost 140.
Yeah, and you, our dear listeners, came through in spades and donated your hard-earned money during an economic disaster and a pandemic. And if there's one thing we can say about those two runoffs, every dollar mattered.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
that's where I want to get.
They split that money between them, so it was they got around 70,000 apiece.
Yeah, and that's where I want to get to today. One, that many people who have left religion miss the sense of community that and shared purpose that one felt was still on the inside. But here we are, being a community. And two, I don't want to call it irony because that's not what I think it is, but it's certainly notable that the community of atheists came together to raise money for a Bible-preaching reverend, and that we are all happy beyond belief to have helped a lifelong devout Catholic defeat a man who is in all likelihood an atheist to become president of the United States.
That is true.
Yeah.
Warnock is a professional religious person. He's not just a religious person. That is his living.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think this speaks to two things. The kind of religious people that Joe Biden and Raphael Warnock are, and the long, strange journey a lot of us have taken from the dawn of the new atheist movement to today. On the latter, Raphael Warnock has been a tireless advocate for the poor, has been arrested for protesting to expand health care, is pro-abortion rights, pro-gay marriage, anti-gun, was endorsed by Planned Parenthood, is loathed by the NRA, and is a senior pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, preaches from the same pulpit as Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah.
If more religious people were like him, dear uncles, we would have nothing to complain about.
We'd be out of a job.
That's right.
Yeah.
It is funny that we can talk about the good kind of Christian.
Yes. I think it speaks to how our movement...
the social justice Christian, that movement of Christianity, absolutely. Like, we'd still have all our beefs with the Bible and shit, but those are people trying to do more good than harm.
At very least, he's the kind of Christian that actually, sounds like Jesus when he talks.
Right. I think that's exactly right. I mean, we complain on the show often and loudly that the bad parts of the Bible are like landmines waiting to be found by someone. But Jesus Christ was undoubtedly, avowedly anti-wealthy, pro-poor, or pro-helping poor people.
Right. He was white.
Yeah. And Warnock reflects the better angels of the Bible, and that's undoubted, right?
Yeah.
And I do think it speaks to how our movement, if you can call it that, has moved past some of the stridency of the Four Horsemen days to come to this moment. A younger, angrier me might not have been able to see past the fact that Warnock is a preacher. So that's a lot of throat clearing, but it's what I want to discuss with the two of you is how we have built a community out of the ashes and how that community has come to see itself and others in the world. And I'm just put a marker down here real quick that there have always been atheists, and the new atheist movement was far from the beginning of public atheism.
Right.
One of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is, I've said this before, is Psalms 14:1. The fool said in his heart, "There is no God," meaning that even back in biblical times, without podcasts or science or anything, there were people who were still like, I don't know if I can believe this shit.
Right.
But
I like to pair that scripture with the scripture, I think in Matthew, it's somewhere in the New Testament that says, that basically condemns anyone who calls someone a fool.
I think that's right, isn't it? Where you call someone a fool is worthy of hellfire, some garbage like that.
Yeah, or he's had his reward or something like that. Anyway.
There's a tweet for everything.
Yeah, exactly. But, for those who don't know, the new atheist movement kind of came out of the wake of 9/11, which was again, a very, very dark day and certainly brought the very idea of dangerous religious fanaticism to the fore. And in the wake of that, four guys, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris, and Richard Dawkins most prominently, became kind of the voice of this. It was called the New Atheist Movement.
Yeah.
And they produced some very good and still very relevant books and materials.
Yeah.
But things have, I for one am very glad that the movement has evolved and morphed and matured since then. But,
some of it has, yes, for sure.
There's still, we are not without our problems.
Yeah.
But I think that, Hitchens has passed, Dennett, I don't know where he's at, but Harris and Dawkins have not aged well.
I don't think that Dennett has a Twitter feed, which is probably a fucking good thing.
Yeah, let's count our blessings on that front.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what Dennett's doing, and that's probably good.
He seemed not to be the real firebrand of the group, right?
But in those days when, the God Delusion came out and the End of Faith, and these guys were being booked on Fox News and, like for combative interviews with Sean Hannity, atheism wasn't, I wouldn't say au courant, but it certainly kind of had its moment in the public sphere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think the movement was hobbled by a kind of stridency that, in hindsight, I think, I don't want to say I regret it. I'm glad that it seems like a portion of the movement has moved above it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would kind of I would modify a little bit, or I'd just add to the 9/11 moment, because in my opinion that was when the world clapped back at us, right? And that was a moment that'll, a lot of people kind of were shaken into realizing, oh, there's a world out there. We have had an impact on it, and not everybody's super happy about that, right?
Right.
Not justifying any fucking thing that was done on that day, but there is causation, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, and I think what happened with the Four Horsemen is, unlike you guys, I've kind of feel like I've been reflexively atheist since I could kind of think about these things. And it just took me a long time to escape the prison camp I was in.
Right.
And then, had a very clumsy, where do you start? Where do you fucking start as an atheist? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the Four Horsemen hadn't happened yet, or not to my awareness, right? So I definitely became very aware of them after 9/11. And my very angry, strident atheism met with their academic justifications for it, right, in ways that were very confirming for me, and probably hit a lot of my confirmation biases. But I would say that really what was most problematic about them was the inherent white male privilege and the white male privilege of the academy, right?
The straight white male privilege.
Exactly. Straight white Western male privilege of the academy. That is, you go back and read some of that stuff and you're like, ugh, God. And I, like you say, I still think a lot of it is quite valuable, right?
Yeah, sure.
But, good people that say and do good things can also turn out to be shitbags later. Or you can also...
Or they can have concurrent shitbaggery sort of running parallel with their goodness.
Exactly.
But here's what's, should be said about that is the truthfulness or falsity of the claims that these guys made in their literature about atheism and the damage that religion can and has done doesn't stand or fall based on them, based on their character. You know what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter if Aristotle never existed, because what his philosophy became isn't dependent on the morality of Aristotle. It stands on its own, and a lot of what these guys wrote stands on its own as far as critique of religion.
Falls on its own.
Or falls on its own.
Yeah.
But Harris, I don't know what happened to Sam Harris, but I still think At the End of Faith is a good read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
and yeah, if you want to give a book to a Christian person who's like, why are you what you are? Maybe not End of Faith because it's a little thicker, but letter to a
Christian nation,
is a great primer or primer to sort of where we're at.
Yeah,
just don't let them read anything that he wrote about Muslim people.
Yeah, or women.
Or women. Yeah.
But I mean,
anything after he met Jordan Peterson, you can just sort of write it off.
Yeah, exactly. But here we are. I think when I first was getting into atheism, so to speak, or becoming more aware of my atheism and what I came to think of religion in the world, I was too strident. I think everyone goes on that journey when you join a group or you leave a group. But, Raphael Warnock is a preacher. And the Bible that he preaches from is the one that we make fun of ad nauseum.
Like we just did in the first segment of the show.
It just did in the show.
I know,
but he's
it makes
a
me
good
nauseous.
man fighting for good causes.
Yeah.
And we can make common cause with people like that, and we should.
Well, we don't have a choice.
Right.
And that's part of this too. Like, first of all, on the stridency topic, I've definitely got up on my hind legs on this show before because a topic will make me very angry, or hits really close to home, with my own experience. But I think, I'm 6 years older than Doug, and I think that my incredibly almost toxic stridency about my atheism really made Doug far less comfortable to explore that avenue for himself for a while.
Interesting.
Would you say that, Doug?
Now I have to kind of reprocess my childhood.
No,
give
let's not do
give me
that.
a second here.
That I know. I kind of know that's part of what was going on. Anyway, but we also, and I still have anger, and I've definitely moved into a more ecumenical space, I suppose, as an atheist. But even if I didn't want to, I have to. Right? Because that is the world we fucking inherited. And I don't regret supporting Raphael Warnock at all. I think he is an incredibly decent man. He was a great politician, and I think he's going to make Georgia very proud.
Right.
But, until the other shoe drops, obviously.
Right. Until we find out he is a communist.
Right.
But if the goal here is to build a more livable society and a saner society and a more equitable society, we don't have a choice.
Right.
Right. We have to work with people with whom, and that's fucking democracy. We have to make deals with people that we may not have 100% of agreement with. Right.
Right.
Well, and let's not kid ourselves. It's not like that's the other side of the table is particularly eager to make deals with us either.
Right.
So I think that it is a job that we should all take upon ourselves to reach across the table when we can, to find that common cause. I think a lot of people, people are justifiably angry at religion and at religious people and at people who I get it. Like, if you've heard someone say words that are oppressive to you as a human, you're not going to want to reach out to them.
Yeah.
But reaching out is the only way that we can make the world better.
I think there is a limit to that, Dan. I'm glad you brought that up. I think there are still, obviously, and I want to talk about these, lines that we will not cross and we shouldn't cross.
Right.
Sure.
Right? Like, reaching across to Raphael Warnock ain't no thing, right? We think of the world very similarly. We want it to be a better place, and we think the way to get there we probably agree on up completely. But there's Mike Pence who reads the same Bible, and I wouldn't reach across the table to throw water in his face if he was on fire.
Right,
I don't mean to be like that, but
you and Raphael Warnock are going to agree about 80% of everything in the world. You and Mike Pence are going to agree about 20%.
But if that.
Yeah. No, Jesus does not make gravity, Mike. So I'm not saying my point isn't reaching across the aisle to the sort of people that went to murder AOC in the Capitol the other day. I'm talking about, I think you're talking about, Doug, there are, look, we have listeners to this show that are still in religion, right? We have people that listen to this show that love Jesus and believe in his divinity, but they like our show, and they, I love them. I do make common cause with them, and that's the world I'm talking about. That
I agree.
The good guys outnumber the bad guys. I think it's just that we need to stop making bad guys where they don't exist.
That's exactly what I think. I think there are things like, prayer in schools or 10 commandments on federal property that are lines we shouldn't cross or allow to be crossed. But those are not, we're not fighting a particular religion. We're protecting our civic religion from infection, and we're protecting minority religions from danger.
Yeah.
Right.
So they can free exercise however they see fit.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think, not making enemies where we don't have them is exactly the point. We have so much work to do to repair this country if it can be done.
Well, I'm going to have to say the thing that I think that I know that you guys don't believe, and or that you'll push back on in some ways. But I am going to say this, which is that I think also the way that we as a society progress is to, without saying your anything that about it being okay that you believe what you believe when it's a belief of oppression of another person or whatever, without giving any assent to that, what we can still reach out to them, to people with whom we deeply disagree, in the sense of like saying, I understand your belief and your why your God is important to you. We're not trying to stop that. We are trying to make sure that everyone feels comfortable in a secular society. Society is secular. You don't have to be, and there's space for you in this place. And make sure that because I hear the rhetoric of enemy too much when it's really just differing citizen, and this society is literally supposed to be for all of us.
I think you're right, and I do think you're right. And there's nobody said this better than James Baldwin when he said we can disagree and still love each other unless your disagreement is rooted in my oppression and denial of my humanity and right to exist. Right. So I think that a lot of what's happening, and this is a problem with religion, is the people you're talking about, Dan, the fucking QAnon loonies and everything, have a misapprehension about what's going on. They don't understand reality or truth or whatever. And that, that leads to another thing I want to say is that I was thinking about our podcast the other day, and which I don't do very often. And I thought, I don't think you guys can differ. I don't think we're evangelical for atheism. I don't think that's the goal here. I think if you found our podcast, you've come to some place where you need to make, you've made or you need to make different life choices about religion, etc. So I just think we're here to help catch people after they've already fallen.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
We're not trying to evangelize our position. We're just sort of, trying to make it fun to be here.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's who we are, is we're kind of the welcoming party, I would hope. That's kind of who we are. And if you want more strident content, there's plenty out there to get. And some of those people are really good friends of ours. But I don't think that's who we are. And it goes back to that misapprehension that a lot of religious or even cultist people have about what we want. We don't want to make this, I mean, I would like it to be a saner society, but I don't think that means it has to be a godless society. It just simply has to be secular. So you can believe in QAnon as long as you don't fucking go storm the Capitol and, deny your children medical care because you're using bee pollen or what the fuck ever, right? You can do those things. You can believe in that shit. We just don't want...
Maybe not QAnon. Let's not go too far.
Right. But at least conservative Christianity.
Right.
Right. And we're not trying to erase their place in society. We're just asking if we can have a place to stand as well.
I mean, we're not trying to legally erase their place in society. We would gladly erase their place in society sort of from a societal
from a philosophical point of view.
Right.
Yeah, because and that brings up another great point, which is any religions are two things. They are either a set of holy books or truth claims, and they are what people do with that. Those are the two things they are. Those are things that can be critiqued and examined and spoken about.
Yeah.
Right? Just like your favorite book or movie, you can talk about. Somebody put an idea into the world, you can discuss it and decide if it's bad or good, right?
How dare you?
We definitely want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But I think, Doug, the point that you're trying to make with this whole thing, if I'm hearing it correctly, is that stridency for the sake of sort of excluding Christian people doesn't help anything.
No. And I that is, part of the larger point I'm trying to make is I think this movement, when it first kind of burst onto the scene, there was a lot of anger, and there still is. You're right, Mark. On YouTube, there's still some vile and nasty stuff, and there's
they're terrible fucking public atheists, like
absolutely
they're despicable people.
Being an atheist doesn't make you moral. It's just very important that we say that. And like I said, I think Donald Trump is probably an atheist.
Yeah,
but, clearly don't want to count myself in any league with him.
He's an accidental
does it
atheist.
I don't think you can be an atheist if you think you yourself are God. But that's
exactly.
quibbling.
But
atheist by default.
Right. I think it's important for our community that we are building, and I think there's also an important point is that we are building a community of atheists, that we treat people as we want to be treated. We employ the golden rule.
Yeah,
and people like Raphael Warnock, who is an incredibly intelligent person. I don't love the book he reads, but other than that, he's a hero. He's an amazing person. Yeah. And we need to live in a world where we can hold those two thoughts in our heads as atheists and be okay with it.
Yeah, and what you're talking about here is the problem of purity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Is what happens this is what happens to movements when they continually demand further and further purity, is they become the worst versions of themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Because not everybody's a zealot. So if you...
We got another Gen Xer talking about cancel culture again.
So if you get rid of, everybody who's not a zealot, then you end up with just zealots.
Yeah.
Right? You have no moderating forces. You have no different voices. And it's a very undemocratic space. And so I think that is... I hope I'm building on the message you're trying to get out there, Doug.
I think so. And I think, maybe we've kind of gotten through it. But yeah, I did think it was an interesting thing that we were unabashedly, unreservedly raising money for a Christian pastor in Georgia.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get around to talking about Ossoff, who is a Jew and cannot be trusted.
That's right. I think that was left unsaid.
Yeah. It's buried. Who needs to say it out loud? It's not our culture and heritage.
Oh, my God.
And let me just leave. Again, this has been a shit fucking week. Epic bad week. But we can't lose sight of what happened in Georgia, because it was truly, truly good news. And I know. We should be happy about that.
That it happened late on Tuesday and fucking Wednesday happened. Jesus.
Wednesday said, hold my beer.
Vanilla Wednesday.
All right. Well, congratulations to all of us for electing them. And thanks, Uncle Doug. And let's just move
go.
on, shall we?
Yeah.